Welcome to This Organized Life. If you're a mom, wife, or coffee lover seeking advice on how to reduce clutter and reclaim time, look no further than your host, Lori Palau, founder of Simply Be Organized and author of Hot Mess, a practical guide to getting organized. For a lot of people, clutter is their dirty little secret, but it doesn't have to be. Each week, we will share practical tips, chat with experts, and provide strategies on how to keep you organized. I hope that by sharing our stories, you feel a little less alone and more empowered to tackle the areas that are holding you back. So let's get started.
Okay, here we go. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of This Organized Life podcast. I'm your host, Lori Palau. And if you are just finding us or you're an OG listener, you guys are in for a treat. I am super excited. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I legit have a smile on my face because this is a spin on organizing that we have not done before on this show. And I have a great guest that's going to be co-hosting with me and or our guest on our show. And her name is Janet Taylor. You may already know of her because she's kind of super famous in the organizing space. She runs a company called Totally Organized that she started back in 1994. So she's even more of an OG than I am. And she's been on the Rachael Ray Show, and she was on HGTV's Mission Organization, which, fun fact, was one of my first favorite organizing shows. So we have to talk about that a little bit. And I had the pleasure, she's also a podcast host, and her popular podcast is called Got Clutter, Get Organized. I mean, there you go, right there. I had the pleasure of being a guest on her show, and I was like, listen, we need to get you on our show. And I was trying to think of a fun topic for us to talk about. And I was just kind of perusing through some of the stuff that she had done. And she had done a blog post a while ago talking about organizing tips. I don't even remember. I might be butchering it a little bit, but it had to do with organizing tips that either she learned from her mom or other people. And I was like, oh my goodness, this would be a great fun episode. And so I put it out to our Instagram community. And I said, I just put a quick post out there. And I said, hey guys, we're going to be doing a conversation all about organizing tips that you learned. I said from your mom, but it could be from your dad, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whatever, and got tons of feedback from all of you guys out there. And so I invited Janet to come on the show to just talk about that, talk a little bit about what she's learned from kind of her lineage, the good, the bad, that people pick up the habits, what she sees with clients. And then I'm going to read some of the listener responses, which I think is going to be super fun. So all of that, you guys are in. It's going to be a jam-packed episode. So without further ado, let me welcome my friend Janet to the show. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you so much, Lori. I am so excited. I just was countdown to when I have a conversation with you. So I'm excited to be here as well.
Well, again, you are an OG like myself. And, I love it. I love talking to people who have been in this landscape for a while because, again, and I love new people too, but I think it's so fascinating because you have had a front row seat of watching the growth and the evolution of the organizing industry from the business perspective, as well as just working kind of on the front lines with clients. And maybe you could just to kind of kick it off, I gave a real top line overview, but just kind of tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do. And then we could kind of talk about your origin story into this industry.
So I am, of course, a fellow podcaster like Lori, and I'm also a fellow organizer like Lori, but also I do corporate trainings as well. And I enjoy that because when you talk about evolution, there was a time when the topic of getting organized was not necessarily spoken about or even thought about in the corporate arena, but now it's really gotten very popular and people are more open to having their employees more or less live that balanced, organized life. So they know it's important for them to bring topics like getting organized in. So that's a little kind of short of who I am and what I am all about. Of course, it's all about organizing, right, Lori?
Yes. So can I just ask a follow-up question to that? Because I think you bring up a really good point. So when you're talking about the specific corporate organizations, because I've done talks in the corporate world as well, and I'm wondering if you're talking more about the tactical, like how do you keep your workspace organized, or if it's more of a, again, I'm using this word very loosely, work-life balance, how do you time management, productivity, or is it a little bit of a hybrid of both?
It's a hybrid of both, but some of them are specifically about the organizing the home.
Oh,
How not to have, do you actually spend time going through your closet? Why do you have two and three and four of everything? Why do you have so much storage space? Those are some of the topics that people are actually talking about in the corporate arena now, and I'm loving it.
I love that because I would say, in my experience, that when I've been brought in to do workshops, it's more focused about how can we incorporate organizing strategies at work. But I love the fact that these professional development, executives or whatever are bringing you in to really talk about the impact, because you and I both know when you are completely disorganized and frazzled at home, that sets the tone for everything else in your life, at work, at school, in all aspects of your relationship. So, oh, I love that. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that people are doing that.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Yay for us.
Yay for us. So tell us, because I know you had an interesting, again, nowadays, people with just creative entrepreneurship and social media and being able to see what's out there, people are branching out into careers that weren't even a thing. But back in the 90s, we didn't have social media. We didn't have all of that stuff we didn't even have the internet. Like, we're dating ourselves, people. You know what I mean? So just come up with this, what I was calling like almost like a made up career in my mind of how did you get to where you are? Well, not get to where you are. How did you make the decision to go from your previous life, your career, into doing this as something that you felt that you could monetize?
So my journey is that I was working at a job. We lost the contract, so we were getting laid off. And in that process, I came across an article. As you said, there was no social media. So I came across an article of a woman who was actually going into businesses, like we just discussed, teaching people how to be more organized in the workspace. And I was like, well, people always saying it about me. So then, of course, I did some old-fashioned research. I found out about the National Association of Organizers. I got connected with the local chapter, back then was just getting started. And that's really how I got started. I was in the process of moving out of my mother's home, but of course, with the layoff, she's like, "Look, you don't have to go anywhere." So I did it like for a year. I did it like part-time. And then after that, it started taking off because, back then, Lori, we were like passing out flyers, telling friends, family, whatever we could do to get clients.
I've told this story before, but for anybody that's newer for you, when I started Simply Be Organized, my kids were like 5 and 7 or something like that. And I used to drive around, and I had one like in preschool or whatever. And I would drive around with her in the car seat, or I would walk in my neighborhood with her in the stroller. And I would put flyers, no joke, people, like, again, old school. I was like Willie Loman of organizing. I would put flyers in people's mailboxes. And one day at like career day or something at school, they were asking, like, well, what does your parents do? And my girls would say, my mom's in the business of flyers. Like, they would say that was my job, that I was, because that's what I'd be like, okay, we're going to go hand out flyers, or we're going to drive around to like neighborhoods and put flyers. And that's no joke, people. That's how we did it back then to get the word out locally. That was our old school Facebook groups.
And you're right. You're right. I mean, I still remember trying to create the flyer, trying to decide, Laura, you remember deciding what color paper you wanted to do it on and the font and all.
There was no Canva. There was no Canva, people. Like, oh my gosh. It's so funny to think about the things that we did. But you know what? Again, it goes to show, like, you're passionate, you're scrappy, you have that entrepreneurial spirit. And this is for and I'm saying this for anybody out there that's listening, that's an entrepreneur, whether it's for professional organizing or some other passion of yours, gift, talent that you have. that you want to try to monetize. And I love the fact that you kind of tested the waters for like a year to kind of make sure. And I say that all the time. This is a great job that you could start as a side hustle, as an additional add-on job to just get your feet wet, to say, hey, listen, I might be good at this, but doing this for other people might not be my jam. Or let me really see, like, do I enjoy this? How can I monetize it? Testing it out. And here you are, like 30 years later. I mean, insane. And you don't even look older than freaking 35. It's
Well, thank you. Thank you, Lori. Thank you so much for that. I'll accept that.
oh my gosh. But I want to, so I just wanted, again, I love to hear people's origin stories. And we do have so many people that are listening or watching that are either in our field or other, fields. And I think it's always great to hear other people's stories, because that's what inspires us, I think, to maybe step outside our comfort zone.
And that is true. And one thing I want to add, in that
Please.
year time, I also tested and decided, do I like to organize this? Do I like to organize that? And that really helped me narrow down my scope of services. Because there's things that, yes, and you and I both know, there's a lot of different organizing things we could do, but then you have to really be passionate about what you want to do. And there's certain things that I just won't do, or I don't feel like I have the skill set to do. Like hoarding, that's not my skill set. That's something that's really beyond what I can offer a client.
Yeah. And again, my last entrepreneurial tip, kind of, because I was an executive recruiter in my past life. And when I would talk about finding jobs or helping people find the right job for them, I always talked, and I learned this from my mentor, Wendy Roth. Shout out Wendy Rothman, where she had the 3 fit factors: can do, will do, and will fit. And I think it applies you can apply it in so many fields. And I look at this in your personal life, and I certainly apply it in my professional life. It's, can you do the job? Like, do I tactically have the skills to do the job? Like, can I program this? Am I a programmer? Can I actually do it? Then it's like, will I do it? Is this something that I want to do? Like, yes, I can pack people up to move, but do I really want to do that? Is that what I want to do? And maybe not, right? Can I work with hoarders? No, maybe that's above my scope, but can I work with this? And do I want to? And then the third thing is the fit. Is this the environment that I want to work in? And when you look at the organizing world and how it's exploded, I see it as a spectrum, and there's so many people, different areas. People help people with downsizing, people help people with growing families, people help with move management. There's so many specific, and then you could get super micro of, I just work on the closets, or just work on photos, or just work in home offices. And so really, I always come back to, what are those 3 fit factors to help you figure out, just because you can do something. And this just is in the world of helping to organize your life. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should be doing it or that you have to be doing it.
So true.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. And now we can be done.
Yay.
All right. So let's move into the topic of the day, which is, what are some organizing tips that you learned from, I'm calling it, again, I'm going to say from your mom, but it doesn't have to be your mom for people out there. I saw this on your website, and that's what kind of spawned my little light bulb moment for this. Talk to me a little bit about that whole article, and kind of what the purpose of what that was for.
So I basically reached out to a lot of fellow organizers, just finding out like what they learned from their moms, because so many people, sometimes they have the misconception that either you have to be born with the gene, or there's some kind of magical something that you learn because this is what you do for a living. And I just wanted to kind of share like some nuggets of how sometimes our environment, and I know from my environment was my mother was very neat. But also, Lori, there was that closet. And I told her several times, I need a hard hat every time I open the door because stuff just kind of falls on my head.
Oh my
And
God,
can you
my mom was the same way.
and I said, "Can you please can I just organize it, please? Because if not, I'm gonna put an eye out with your pocketbook. So can I do that?" So, but also in that, I did see some things that she did. For example, whenever like we would might have pancakes and she would open a new bottle of syrup, she would put on her list that when she went grocery shopping, she need to buy a bottle, even though we just started using it. But that was her way of making sure we would never kind of run low on things. Or when she got meat, she would buy the big packets, she would break them down, and then she started just like labeling them. Okay, this is the date I bought the meat. So when she went in the freezer, she knew what was fresh, what wasn't. And even way before recycling was popular, when we read like the Sunday paper or the daily news, which is of course no longer around, she would wrap it up and then put it out for trash. So it was like little things like that I saw her do, and it was like amazing.
I love this for so many reasons. And I'm just going to pull it apart and explain why. First of all, it's so funny because these are the little things that she probably didn't even articulate it to you. She probably didn't walk you through and give you a lesson, which is something that I have a tendency. Well, now my kids are grown, but when they were little, I'd be like, okay, guys, this is a teachable moment. She probably didn't even do that. It was just you observing, this is how we do things. And people will learn that good and bad for habits, right? This is how we do things. And when you grow up learning, that is your norm. Oh, as soon as we open up, because I do that, it's like, especially for things that you don't go through quickly. Like I open up a mayonnaise, you're not going through that in a week, hopefully, but like you don't want to get to the bottom of it and then realize you have none. So just getting in those habits of creating these systems are really planting the seeds for how you live your life. And I love that because she probably didn't even do it by, I always say things happen either by default or design. We develop habits one way or another, either intentionally or just by default. And she was just leading by example, and you were watching and observing. I love that.
And then as you were talking, one thing she did, which in the beginning, I didn't understand it, but she was a time saver when it came to the supermarket because her list was basically almost laid out like the supermarket. So the top of the list was like aisle one, and going down and so forth. And then even later on in life, when I had to kind of go with her and assist her, it still was a system because basically she still had the same system for me because I would go up and down the aisles, but then everything around, because she still wanted to buy her like fruits and vegetables and still wanted to touch all of that stuff. So she would just do that. But it was like, I was like, wow, I love this system. And it really was like a time saver because I wasn't like going, okay, I'm over here, but now, oh, I need something over in this aisle, but then I got to go back over here. So even that, Lori, she just had like her own little system. And from that, that's how I shop now. That's how I write my list now. One day I realized, I said, oh my goodness, I'm writing my list the way the store is laid out. So then I just could go in and out. It's
I
just
love it.
wonderful.
And now they have apps that do that. If you have,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They do that, but she was a pioneer. She was a pioneer. What was your mom's name? Is
Ida.
Ida? We love
Yes.
Ida.
I know.
Oh,
No.
is Ida still here? Is she still
No,
with
she's
us?
not. No, she's not
Okay.
with us. But I
All right.
always
But
say Ida F. Always say Ida F. Because
I,
she always made sure she signed her name Ida F. So
oh my gosh. Well, Ida F, cheers to you. Um, so and again, one of the things is I know that again, like you said, not everybody has those necessarily healthy model behaviors because again, if people are just disorganized and then but themselves and they don't have these systems and strategies, that's the behavior they are modeling. And I know that you are doing a lot of corporate work, but in your years working one-on-one with people in homes, I'm just wondering if you could just pull out, again, we're talking decades of stuff. So maybe just pull out a few things that you've observed that are kind of common threads with people when it comes to things that they pass on or habits.
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking about that. And one of the things that really stands out among all of them, and it's kind of like a corporate thing too. There was this woman, she hired me because she wanted me to help her organize her office. And as we're walking to her office, I saw another office. And I'm thinking, oh, I want to go into that. Oh, that's what I'm thinking. But then when we got to her office, she's like, oh, I just wanted to let you know we just passed my mother. And I'm thinking, oh, so this explains why your office is the way it is because that's the habit you saw. Because if we don't see people put things back where they belong, pick things up, hang a coat, and it's simple stuff, Laura, like hanging a coat up. Maybe if you use the scissors, putting them back. And that's a lot of times what I see because one client called me in because she was pretty neat, but she was having issues with her sons. And the issue with her sons wasn't necessarily that they didn't want to be neat. It was just they didn't know how. And she didn't know how to approach the project. And it was something simple, Lori, when I worked with the younger son and just working on getting his bedroom organized and his closet organized. The first thing I realized, I said, do you have any hangers? He's like, no. And I said, okay. So then I went to the mother. I said, this is the reason why he can't hang his clothes up because he needs some hangers. It was just something simple like that.
I love it. I had a client one time that was similar situation, and she was a busy mom with I think 3 or 4 kids, and she was complaining that they would come home from school and just drop their bags and just leave it. And I said, okay, and during my intake, I'm like, okay, well, walk me through like what is the system? Where's their entry point? And they came in through the garage, and they didn't have like a dedicated mudroom, but there was nowhere, there was no designated, there was no hooks, there was no spot. And I go, well, it's no wonder that they're just shopping their bags because there's no home for it. So let's create that zone and then we can have a place. It's hard to teach them to put something away if they don't. It's hard to hang up your clothes if you don't have hangers.
And and that's so true. And then just you saying that, I remember a woman came to me. I was at a speaking engagement. And she said, my husband, he just needs to change. He just needs to change because it's frustrating. And I said, so what's going on? She said, he just comes home. He just throws his hat and his keys by the front door. And like you said, I says, well, do you have a hook there? No. I says, well, it's not necessarily changing him. It's just creating a system because he likes coming home, taking his hat off. He likes coming home, putting his keys by the door so he can find them in the morning when he goes out. And she's like, huh. So you're right. Sometimes it's just like having a place to put things.
Right. And keeping it simple in the way that it's going to be easy for you to do it. I'll tell one more anecdotal story and then we'll go to break. I was working with a client one time, and she was talking about the fact that everyone in her house, it was her husband and her kids, they came home and none of them hung up their coats in the coat closet. But they would do stuff in the mud room there was one spot where they had some hooks and that seemed to work. And I go, and they were actually building a new house. And I was walking through the new house and I said, well, instead of in this closet doing hanging bar, why don't we just do like a horseshoe of hooks? Because it seems like that extra step of putting it on a hanger was too much. And if the whole goal is just to get it away and organized so that it's not on the floor, you can easily retrieve it. At the end of the day, do you really care if it's on a hook or a hanger? And she was like, no. And I go, so if they're going to have the buy-in with a hook, as opposed to that extra step of putting it on a hanger, let's just do a row of hooks. And she was like, I never thought of that. And again, sometimes it's almost overly simple that we don't even think about it. And it's not, and like you said, it's not about changing the people. It's how do we make the system adapt to what is already like organically natural for them. So I love that.
So true. So
I love it. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we come back. I want to dive into some of the feedback that we got from our listener poll, which I think is super fun. So sit. All right, Janet. So after I approached you about doing this episode, I went out to our interwebs and I said, all right, guys, we're going to be doing this episode coming up. Tell us, good or bad, what are some things that you learned from your mom or parents growing up? And I will just give you some overall statistics. I would say probably 90% of the people, it was all good, like all positive, good things. There was about 10% of people that were just sharing how they didn't have the great modeled behavior, which again is true. And it is not to point a finger or shame anybody. But
Mm-hmm.
I always say, and I'm sure you agree, that it a lot of this is a learned skill, and we don't always, we joke about, and you mentioned earlier about being born with that organizing gene. But for people that grow up in a household where they take comfort in their clutter or the disorganization, and that's all they know, that's the lens in which they see the world, and or they might not like it, but they might not have the tools to know how to fix it.
And you're right. And even though I've learned a lot of wonderful things from my mom, the one thing actually she taught me that I decided I didn't want to do is because my loving mother, was a saver. So every time she got those margarine containers, Lori, she saved every last one of them. Then, of course, as an adult, I've got food storage containers, the margarine containers, and I'm like, okay, I need to figure out what works for me. And what I decided doing is I actually only buy margarine and butter in stick form. Therefore, once I use it, I have nothing else to save. Because I
Oh,
know
I
I would
love
have
it.
a tendency to save it and like, oh, I could use it for this, I could use it for that. No, I had to cut that habit.
I love that. That's a great point. And like I said earlier, I alluded to my mom, you could eat off her floor. Like the house was clean. She had for people when, we would have the carpet, the vacuum marks in the carpet, like you could, but like you said, you would go in. It wasn't every spot. It wasn't every drawer, but there were my mom saved. She loved pictures and things like that. So there was tons. And my mom was an artist, so she had a lot of stuff. And again, behind closed doors, there was collections and a lot of stuff. And that's why I always say it's really not always just what you see on the outside, and I think that's so relevant. Okay. So I'm going to read through. I actually just wrote them down. I pulled them from the internet this morning. So, okay. So here's one from Efficiency Bee. And that is actually my friend Melissa Leon. She commented, and she has a podcast called Efficiency Bee. And I love this. She said she learned a lot from her mom, but the one thing that she loved is that she taught her never to trust her memory, and that if she wanted to stay organized, to write things down. And I love that, because for so many of us, we try to use our memories to remember everything from what we need at the grocery store to, who's somebody's birthday or an anniversary. And my mom was a big writer down. I called it her date book Bible, and it had
Mm-hmm.
everybody's addresses and the birthdays and the anniversaries and
Yep.
everything.
Yep. My mom too.
And again, writing that down, not relying on your memory, is such a great organizing tip for people.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Oh my goodness. Yes. You're bringing back memories of the address book, Lori.
Right. And it's true. It's that address book. That was like crazy. Well, again, I'm like, I live my life by everything that's in my phone, like my dates, my schedule, all of that. So it's the same thing. Somebody else, again, lists seem to be a common theme for a lot of people that were, looking at some of the things. People said grocery lists. That's how, especially as a mom with a lot of kids, my mom who had 5 kids, a few ways. And this was from Josh Fields. He said that we had 5 kids and she made lists for everything. All of us each had a list. And again, it goes back to that, let's not rely on our memory. I love
And I think
that.
that's good, especially when you're going shopping, because if you don't have a list, then you'll get home and you'll start unpacking and you'll realize, oh, I forgot something.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Now, my friend at Curated Spaces, they said, and I love this because this is like organizing 101. Mom said, make your bed every day.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Now, were you guys bed makers? We were bed
Yes.
makers.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes. You didn't like leave your bedroom unless the bed was made, and you definitely had to make sure before you left the house it was neat, it was made. Yes. And
Yes.
I still do that. Oh,
Yeah. And I really truly, and I've talked about this before on the show, and I'm sure you have too. Really, again, just setting that tone, that little win of the day. It's something that you can do. I mean, I've even, because I'm a geek, like I've even take like time to see how long it takes. And it really, it's like it's under 2 minutes to make a bed. And it shouldn't be that complicated. And again, for you to just prioritize that time, it does make a difference when you walk in. It gives you that sense of completion. And then when you walk in at the end of the day, you have something that is done, and it does have an impact.
it
So,
certainly does, especially when you walk into your bedroom and you can see your bed. It just looks so inviting and so
oh,
relaxing.
yes. Um, oh, okay. So here's another one. This is, I'm literally, if you guys are watching, I'm actually just reading it. So our friend Martha Carroll Stewart at Chaos Organizing said her mom's label tape was masking tape. And she said I never put, wait, what'd she say? You can be sure I never put my dish into the sink. Um, our house always stayed neat. We were expected to keep our rooms neat. So you cleaned up everything before you went to bed, or you were getting up early. So she said, I love that. I love that. That's so funny. Oh, this is a good one. I still struggle with this one. Get It Done by Stephanie said she learned how to properly fold a fitted sheet from her mom.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, those fitted sheets. Oh my goodness. But I just recently learned how to do that. I keep practicing, Lori.
I still struggle. I'm not going to lie. Like, I mean, I can get it so it looks more than just like a jumbled mess.
Hmm.
But my hack is I keep all my sheets in a basket. So I have sheets like, so in my girls' linen closet, I had sheets for each one of them, and I just would fold their sheets. So even if they weren't perfect, air quote, folded, they were in there. And then the baskets were neat and organized. And it gives the illusion of it being, you know, Pinterest perfect or whatever you want to call it.
Baskets are wonderful. I love
Yes.
baskets.
Yes. So this is interesting. So here's and I'm going to butcher her name, but her first name is Angel. Her last name I'm going to butcher it. She says, "My mom wasn't super organized, but the house was generally in order. I learned how to do dishes at an early age and to help clean the house every week. She didn't teach me how to cook, but I could clean like nobody's business." And I think that there's also, again, there's value in that too. It's about prioritizing the things that need to get done.
And that is so true. And also she's at a place where she doesn't have to be embarrassed if her doorbell rings or if somebody wants to come over and just hang out. And that's important.
Yeah, I remember, and just reading that made me think. So my mom, Mondays was the day that she would strip the beds. And I remember that she would, that Monday mornings, that's when she would strip the beds and do that laundry. And that was like, I guess her, because we didn't have like a cleaning person. We didn't growing up. And so that was like the day that she did all of the air quote heavy lifting, was Mondays. And I guess I just, and we just knew it. That was part of the routine, that's how that was.
And
I
that's
love that.
good. And then
Yeah.
also from my mom, I learned how to meal plan because she would actually,
Ooh,
like Sundays would be, she would cook a lot of food, which would be Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday she'd have a plan. And then as we get to the weekend, it might be, just something, whatever. But I learned that to be strategic about my meals from my mom.
I love that. That is great. Yeah, that's my mom used to do it too. And again, it's so funny, like just even having this conversation, like I'm thinking back to my mom, like the lists that she would have for the different days. And again, it wasn't anything that was really talked about. It was just, this is what we did. This is an interesting one, and I bet you there's a lot of people out here who can relate. So, Interiors by Jessica writes, my mom would put everything away, but she would put it away in unlabeled boxes. So she never remembered where they had been stored or what was in the boxes. So then she would always end up buying more stuff that she already had. So I've seen this version of this with clients where people have the misconception, I'll say, that putting something away means that it's organized. And I always talk about the ease of retrieval. How quickly can you get something when you need it? And that can go for papers, that could go for your spices or, stuff when you're cooking. It could go for clothes. It could go for whatever it is that you're looking for. Anyone can mindlessly put stuff in a drawer or a bin and put it away. But the proof in the pudding is when you need it, do you know where to go to look for it?
And you're right, because I worked with a woman one time. We were doing her daughter's closet. She bought these beautiful dresses, but she didn't take them out the bag. She just put them in the closet. A year later, when she brought me in, she felt really bad because she wasted so much money. She said, I really spent a lot of money on these dresses and now she can't even wear them. But sometimes we have to even go as far, Lori, as taking stuff out the bag when we put them in the designated spot. So we'll at least know what it is.
Yes. And that's a great tip for people with hand-me-downs. I've seen a lot, like a lot of times, and I'm sure you've seen this too. And if you're a parent out there that's either been on the receiving end of hand-me-downs or you are the giver of hand-me-downs, a lot of times you transport them in a garbage bag, right? It's the easy way to give, or like, here you go. And when I had one client in particular who had multiple kids and got a lot of hand-me-downs, and then her kids would outgrow, and we would actually, when I first started working with her, there was stuff that, like, whole seasons that we missed the boat because they were in a bag and they weren't labeled, as opposed to saying, okay, here's my 2T and here's all of the stuff. And so again, even taking that extra step about taking it out and sorting it to say, okay, when I need this, when my kid is now this size, where I know that this is the space I'm going to go to get it. Because again, we get these things and a lot of times we just take them. We're like, okay, I'm just going to put them here. And then kind of like the lists, without writing it down, you forget.
That's
We
so
can't
true.
remember.
No, we can't, because we'll move on to the next, whatever the next thing is.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. And this is the last one that I'm going to read. And this is from Becky Fallon. And I love this tip because this is so cute. And this is actually, she learned this from her grandfather, which is so cute. So she said her grandfather used to save glass pickle jars and use them to organize things like screws and nails and other like tool things. And he even went so far, in his house, they had like low ceilings in the cellar. And to maximize the space, he would glue the lids to the ceiling so they would hang. And then it just didn't take up like counter or shelf space. And so she said, now she goes, and it was, obviously he wasn't buying these storage containers and they were clear so you could see through it and see exactly what you had. And she said she still, has taken that with her. And I just love that.
That is fabulous. That is so fabulous. Wow.
Yeah. His own magnetic
Yeah.
organizer.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Um, I just, the whole point of doing this again is just to hear some of the things that we grow up with that we either kind of, I don't even want to say take for granted, but we just don't even stop to even give pause to, because it is just the way that we have done things. And if you are somebody out there that's listening that is maybe struggling in a particular area of organization, it might behoove you to like take an introspective look of, well, and again, this isn't to point fingers at the parents and blame them or anything like that, but like, okay, so when I was like, what did that look like in my house growing up? What is the habit that I just have inherited from that? And what do I want to change? And I think I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
And you're right, because one of the things I wanted to change was just all the storage containers, all the margarine containers, but also I wanted to have a neater closet. So which means, at least seasonally, I go in my closets and I just make sure things organized so things aren't falling on me. And then also, later in life, I really had to kind of share with my mother how to organize her paperwork. So then that was something that I really, really do. And I try to get rid of as much as I can because she did not necessarily have a system, Lori. And a funny story, really short, is I bought her a file storage box with file folders. And then one time, this was in the winter, I come home and she was using it as a stand for the Christmas tree. I said, you know what? I said,
Ida, how Ida asked. At least she was using it for
and then she was
something.
using it. But you know what? It was like a slow progression, but finally she began to use it to the point where she was like, Janet, I need some more file folders and some more file folder labels for my stuff. I said, okay, fine, you got it. So yeah, but that was
I
so funny
love
when I
it.
walked in and I was like, okay,
Talk
it
about
was,
talk about repurposing something.
she certainly did. She certainly knew how to repurpose that little file storage box to,
Oh,
put her Christmas tree on top of.
I love it. So if you were to give, like, if someone's listening out there and maybe
Mhm.
they didn't have tons of healthy model behavior, maybe they're looking for some other strategies, what are just some general, and again, I know we're oversimplifying this, but if
Mhm.
someone's out there, what are a couple of things, a couple of takeaways that you might want to throw their way of either stuff for them to do or just think about in terms of like the practical side of organizing?
I think the practical side is one thing, and this is something I'm really disciplining myself to do, is sometimes just put things away. Because a lot of times we have a habit, whether we come home, we just drop things, whether by the front door, the desk, the countertop, but just take the few minutes it's going to take to put something away. You use some scissors, you took them out the drawer, put them away. You wear a coat, hang it up, or if you have a special spot for your pocketbook, your shoes, put things away. But also something I truly believe, Lori, is sometimes we need to purge first before we go out and purchase stuff. Because
Mm.
sometimes, we see all the stuff, but a lot of times once you start going through the stuff, half of the stuff, a lot of times is going to be donated or it may just go out the house. So kind of purge before you purchase. I always tell people that. But definitely, if you can just take a few minutes and put something back, just think. Your counters will be clear, your desks will be clear, maybe shoes, you won't be stumbling over shoes when you come in the house, or either you won't get upset when you look in the closet and realize, well, how come all the coats are just like on the floor? So sometimes those are just like some simple tips I try to tell people.
I love it. I love it. Simple, practical, actionable, doable, and none of it costs any money to do what you just suggested. Right. So I love it. Okay. Tell our listeners, is there anything else? I mean, I know you have so many amazing things that you have out there. In addition to your corporate speaking and your clients, just take a few minutes before we take our last break to just like give everybody a snapshot of the things, the way if they want to connect up with you and all the things that you're offering out there.
Well, of course, the best way to connect with me is just definitely going to my website. It's janetmtaylor.com. And of course, I have a podcast, Got Clutter, Get Organized. So I would love for you to listen to that. But also, I am a corporate trainer, corporate speaker, and I just really, truly like sharing just my passion for how to help people, what I call live an organized life and, be your partner on your journey to living it life and just giving you strategies to help you along the way.
Well, of course, for anybody that's been around us, they know that we will link to all things Janet M. Taylor to in our show notes, on our podcast page, everywhere. So and definitely as soon as you're done listening to this, go over and subscribe to her show because obviously if you're listening to this podcast, you're going to love hers as well. So all right, we're going to take one last break and then we're going to come back with our hot mess minute wrap up questions. So sit tight. Hey guys, I just want to tell you about an upcoming webinar that I'm going to be hosting on Wednesday, the September the 20th. Now I know it's a little ways away, but we're going to be opening up the pre-sale soon, or the okay, we're not going to be opening up pre-sale. Okay, we're going to be opening up the doors soon for you to register for the webinar. But for now, we are going to be having a wait list because this webinar is only going to be limited to 100 people. And it is geared towards anybody that is interested in either starting a professional organizing business, wondering if this is the right fit for them. Maybe they're just like trying to figure out what their next natural step is, and they like organizing and want to say, is this something that I might be interested in doing professionally? Or maybe you have an organizing business and it's not necessarily growing the way that you want, or you're not attracting the clients that you want. And so if you fall into any of those categories, I strongly encourage you to sign up to attend this webinar. It's completely free, and we'll be giving away lots and lots of free content and information, things for you to think about moving forward. And then anybody that attends gets first crack at joining my mentoring, my one-on-one mentoring program, which is limited to 10 people. That is it, 10. With all the other stuff going on, we are really cracking down on the amount of people that we're going to be bringing into the program. And so if this is something that's for you, definitely jump on the wait list. So again, check out the links in our show notes, check out the links in our bio, and on our website, you will find the sign up for the free webinar, or at least the wait list for it. Okay, thanks. Janet, this has been such a fun conversation. I really love kind of getting into this. And I always think it's fun to like learn what our organizers are like behind the scenes, and just getting in a snapshot to what your life was like growing up is just super fun. And I appreciate you sharing that with all of us. So we're all about inspiration here. And I don't know, are you a reader? Are you somebody who likes to read?
I love to read. Yes.
All right, good. Okay. So, because sometimes I get people that panic, they're like, I don't really read that much. And I'm like, okay, we can figure it out. But I'm a reader, and I love getting book recommendations from our guests because I feel like you guys are all smart and interesting people. So if you're going to refer something, I'm going to listen to it. So is there a book, and it could be something current, it could be something that you read years ago, but either something that was transformational for you, or something that you were like, this is a go-to book for me, or I recommend this to somebody? If so, what is that? And if you have a couple, you can feel free to share.
So one book is definitely Who Moved My Cheese. I read that every single year in January. And also, if I am going through a major change in life, I always read that book. It's just so impactful. It's a very short read, so I just love that. And right now, at the suggestion of my mentor, I'm reading Disruptive Thinking. So
Ooh.
yes, that's excellent. Not only is it the book, but also there's the disruptive conversations, which is also excellent as well. I just saw one. So yes, I
Oh.
just like it. It's like just, things, how sometimes right has become wrong and wrong has become right, but it's just really just looking at what is right, and just sometimes just going for it. Like this is right, so this is what I believe. So I love it.
Oh, I love it. I'll definitely have to check that out. Thank you so much. And yes, Who Moved My Cheese is a classic. If you guys have not ever read it, I strongly encourage you. Great, great book. And then our last two questions, which we ask every guest, and this is especially poignant for organizers because, again, I'm sure you've gotten this as well, where people think because this is what you do, that your life is perfect and organized in every facet all the time, 24/7. And we all know that's just fake news.
Yes, yeah.
But in this particular season of your life, where do you feel like you are the most organized, and where do you feel like you're a little bit of a hot mess?
Well, I think right now I'm actually, because you can't see it, I'm looking at my hot mess. And my hot mess is because I've got donations that I need to just get out of my house. So that's the hot mess by the front door. And I know a lot of your listeners probably are feeling the same thing. It's like, oh, I got to schedule it in. So that's my hot mess. But I think the one thing I'm really good at is because of the hot mess, is because now I open up my closet, and it's like, I'm like, oh yeah, I like everything in there. I love everything. I can see all my colors and all my favorites. So yeah, that's the one place I'm loving right now. But yeah, the hot mess is right by the door, Lori. So
It
yeah,
happens.
so
We all have it. We have it. But that's awesome. Janet, I wish I could reach through the computer and give you a big hug. Thank you so much for coming on our show. I really appreciate your time and sharing your wisdom with all of us. It's so inspiring and so helpful. And I know that I've learned things, and I'm sure that our listeners have as well. So thank you so much.
And I have enjoyed being here, Lori. It has been so much fun. Thank you so much for having me here today with you.
And if you are new to our show, please, please make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you're listening, or if you're watching on YouTube. Again, if you want to watch our conversations, we're on YouTube as well. And do the same for Janet, connect up with her show. Make sure that you follow us on social media. If you're interested in getting the written transcripts from our show, you can get that in our show notes or subscribe to our email list. Again, all of this is out there for you. Love sharing all of these free content for everybody to help y'all live a more organized life. So if you know somebody who might benefit from our show or the wisdom from Janet, please share this episode with a friend. Until next week, I'm Lori Palau. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, please spread the love and share it with your friends. And if this is your first time joining us, make sure to click the subscribe button wherever you are listening so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, please leave us a review so other people know that our show is worth the listen. You can also find us on YouTube and Instagram at This Organized Life Podcast. And if you'd like to connect with us, you can head on over to our website at simply the letter B like boy organized.com, which is filled with tons of resources, including free downloads, checklists, links to our amazing organizing partners, and all of our digital offerings. I'll see you next week for another episode of This Organized Life.